All right.
Okay, thank you for tuning in to this Tuesday, June the 14th, Organic News here on Awake Radio. There's so much going on in the world, crazy things going on in the world with the Orlando shooting. And my first guest, Melina Abdullah, who was scheduled to be on just until a couple of minutes ago, she got involved. Someone got arrested. She's detained because she's close to the person that got arrested. But she did give me the contact of another great guest who is active in Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, Professor Anthony Ratcliff. And you are also from Pan-African Studies at the California State University in Los Angeles. Is that right, Anthony?
That's it. That's where I'm at.
Oh, great. So thank you for, we just kind of scheduled you to be on about, 15 minutes ago.
Yeah. Hey. Well, we always say we got to love and protect one another. And part of that is we also have to support each other. So she couldn't do the call, so I said I could get on there and support. And so I'm here to talk to you about what's going down out here. Amen.
Thank you so much. I made notes for Abdullah, but I'm sure, you probably know a lot about what's going on over there with Jasmine, Jasmine Richards, and when I contacted Melina, and we were talking about what we were going to discuss. Of course, it was going to be Jasmine, and then in contrast with that Stanford University and the guy only getting 6 months for rape, which is a complete outrage. I think we were going to maybe touch a little bit on that. But we'll go to roughly 6:30 or so and see what happens. Okay, so that was in honor of the 49 shot at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando that we're going to be talking about in the second hour. So right now we're going to talk with Professor Anthony Ratcliff about what's going on in Los Angeles with Black Lives Matter. And one of the activists with Black Lives Matter, Jasmine Richards, who they want to... what is the status as far as them still wanting to give her 4 years, Mr. Ratcliff?
Actually, two things. First of all, she actually goes by Jasmine Abdullah now.
Right.
But we know about Jasmine Richards, but she goes by Jasmine Abdullah, so I want to lift that up. And actually, she didn't get 4 years. That was sort of that was what the sentence could have been. But what the judge handed down was a 90-day sentence. So, and really that 90-day sentence came because there was a massive outpouring of solidarity. People from all across the country filled out petitions, signed petitions. We had one petition for color of change, which had over 90,000 people sign it. It was 80,000 the day of the hearing last week. But then since then, we got more. So about 90,000 people signed that petition. We had another petition that was specifically to Asian American folks, the API community, because both the prosecutor and the judge were Asian American. So a lot of Asian American allies felt like they could, say something directly to them. So they signed a petition as well, which was another 20,000. So it was over 100,000 signatures that went trying to demand that Jasmine get no jail time. So that plus a number of letters, solidarity letters, letters of support, character letters that came in on behalf of Jasmine Abdullah. And the judge, I think, saw all that and decided not to give the 4 years, which could have been, or the prosecutor actually was only asking at the end of the day for 1 year, right? But that's way too much for what we believe should have been no jail time. So the judge decided to kind of split the difference and gave her 90 days. We're not happy with 90 days either. We know that's better than 4 years or a year, but 90 days is still too much time for an activist who clearly was railroaded, was clearly persecuted and given an egregious convicted for an egregious so-called crime of lynching. And so we're still trying to fight that. We're trying to make sure we can get that off her record. But the fact that she only had 90 days is a lot better than what it could have been. But we're not going to just sit back and allow that to happen. And we're doing a lot of jail support to make sure that Jasmine is taken care of.
So exactly what was she arrested for? I mean, I know, right, they're calling the charge felony lynching. And let me see, I looked it up, and I found something on this. Black Lives Matter organizer Jasmine Abdullah, a.k.a. Jasmine Richards, targeted and convicted of attempted lynching. And it gives you this kind of, I'm just trying to find where it talked. I mean, right, it described what this lynching is. I mean, lynching is what's done to black people, not what black people do.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. The irony behind it all is the fact that the title, the name of it, right, the lynching thing is what really got people up in arms. But one thing we recognize is that they were accusing her of trying to intervene and trying to take away somebody unlawfully who was in police custody. And that's kind of that's the language that the state uses. However, the way it was used to be defined as lynching. And so one of our state legislator people out here in California, she's African American. She felt like the term itself was problematic, and it was only being applied now to Black Lives Matter organizers. There was another person in the Bay Area, up in the Bay Area by actually Sacramento, who was also arrested and given that charge with attempted lynching. So for Jasmine to be having that same thing, by the time she actually went to court, they took away the word lynching, but it's still the same thing, right? It's this idea of going in, taking somebody from police custody. But usually what lynching was going in to take somebody from police custody to kill them yourself, right? Because they felt like the police, the justice system wasn't going to do it. And so white supremacists historically had done that. And we know of thousands of lynchings that occurred throughout the country. And so the fact that they would still, identify activists and give them the same charge is very problematic. And so what it was Jasmine was involved in action. She was actually, that day, the day that it occurred, she was leading the protest, or not even a protest, it was actually a peace march, right? So a number of Black Lives Matter activists in Pasadena, people from LA went there, young people were there that were there in support, and they were just doing a march. And they were trying to march for peace, trying to stop, gang violence and that sort of thing. And so what they did is they noticed that across the street from their march, actually prior to what they saw, there was a number of police that were in the area already. So police had kind of been surveilling. There's actually, during the court case, one of the police officers admitted that they knew about this march for a long time. I guess they'd been surveilling the Facebook page. And so they were kind of in the area. There was helicopters overhead for about 4 hours before this whole situation occurred. And so what really instigated it was a woman, a black woman who was at a restaurant or at a store, allegedly was trying to buy something, didn't have enough money. It was like 20 cents short. So she was trying to, get the thing. Something happened between her and the store owner. There was an altercation between the two of them. The altercation is spilled out into the street. And so people across the street saw what was going on. So they kind of walked over to see what was happening. At that time, the police came in, and that's when they intervened. And so, that's when they started attempting to take the woman, the black woman, who the store owner claimed was trying to rob her, even though it was really about a 20 cent, not having 20 cents to pay for something. And so the police, that's when they intervened. And initially they were going to take the woman, but then the crowd was like, don't take her. And so then the police kind of backed off. Later on, so the woman walked away. Later on, the police came back because the store owner kind of accused the woman of stealing something and trying to rob her. And that's when the police went and really tried to arrest that woman, the black woman. And that's when Jasmine and the other organizers and other young people in this community kind of went back and really were trying to make sure the police weren't going to manhandle the woman, because they felt like it was just already a questionable arrest, right? Like this wasn't something that should be arrestable. And that's one thing that Jasmine and other people were saying, like, y'all don't have the right to arrest her. They were kind of, intimidating, I guess, to the police officers. And that's when the police, they didn't even arrest anybody that day. They kind of observed what was happening. They took pictures. And it wasn't until a couple of days later that Jasmine was picked up and arrested for the lynching charge. And so, we really see it as an issue of them targeting her, because the fact that they were observing and surveilling the movement before that, because she had already had run-ins with the police before, because she had been very outspoken about a young man named Kendrick McDade, who was killed by Pasadena police. And so they saw her as a threat, as a problem, and that's why they really targeted her. And she was the only one out of anybody that was there that got put on trial. So all the other people that were involved, none of them got put on trial. It was just her, and she's the one that the state wanted to put, or at least the city of Pasadena and the county of LA wanted to put all their emphasis on getting her arrested and getting her convicted for this charge.
There's a video. I wanted to play it like when we're done talking, maybe at 6:30 or so. It's called. It's on YouTube, and it's called "This Is a Movement, Not a Moment." And I thought Jasmine said something like really powerful in this video when she said, because she had some issues, drugs and drinking and things like that. I never had any issue with the police until she picked up a bullhorn and got involved and started trying to be empowered,
That's it.
And it kind of doesn't surprise me because, I've had my experiences just, trying to be empowered in this world and feeling like, you really do threaten people when you, try to be empowered, and you can feel like the system really doesn't want you to be empowered.
That's definitely, we definitely see that as the case, right? Because Jasmine, in Pasadena and different parts of LA had, clearly when she was younger was part of a gang. But when she found out about Black Lives Matter, her whole life changed. She was one of the first people to really kind of join Black Lives Matter out of the immediate circle here in Los Angeles. And so what she did, she joined a caravan that occurred after Mike Brown was killed in Ferguson. So there was a caravan, a nationwide caravan of different Black activist groups that all had a caravan to Ferguson, Missouri, and Jasmine was on that. And so when she came back, it was out of that caravan that the Black Lives Matter network was born. But when she came back, she just totally thrusted herself into this movement. And she really began to see the relationship between state-sanctioned violence and the community violence that she had kind of grown up with, and recognized the relationship. Like, it wasn't just like these things were happening in a vacuum, right? Like, there's a clear correlation between community violence and state deprivation of those communities, and then the state violence that comes in and tries to, justify the murder of police. And so she saw these things occurring all her life, and she finally had the language to put to it. And from my talking to her and other people talking to her, that's what really threw her into this movement head first. And it wasn't until she became knowledgeable of those things and began to be able to organize people around these things and began to lead the struggle in Pasadena to get justice for Kennedy Day that she became a threat and a target of Pasadena police. And so it is that recognition of her own internal power and the ability. I think the thing that really scares them, and the reason why they continually harass and they continually target, and she's been arrested. She got arrested other times after that by the police because of different protests, whatever. It's really because they see that she's not only able to reach, like elite people. Like, she can go to, she's come to Cal State Los Angeles, and she speaks and really moves people in those contexts. She can speak to the academics and to, intellectuals and to politicians. But the thing that really scares the community and scares the city of Pasadena and Los Angeles County is the fact that she also moves folks that have been marginalized and have been disenfranchised. So she speaks to young people and gets them to see that they have strength and they have power.
Yeah.
And the only reason, and that's the thing I think that makes them most scared, because if you get people that believe that they have no hope and you give them hope, then they're worried. Then the people in power are worried that those people might begin to actually ask questions and maybe even rise up. And I think that's what Jasmine really brings to this movement, is her ability to inspire and get people to move. And I think that's why they went after her with this case specifically.
Well, I'm glad somebody's motivating people. I really tried, like, for decades to empower people around me, like where I grew up. I'm kind of going back some decades. Because it was so obvious to me that, you weren't really able to, reach your full potential. You weren't being raised. Like most of the people around me, it's like they'll just, their goal is to just get a job, pay their bills, maybe get married and have some kids, but never really self-actualize, and be like the full person, the full powerful person that you're supposed to. And, I was just always trying to get people to question that. And, be a little bit more ambitious. I mean, not in a like Wall Street, greedy, materialistic, hedonistic way, just in a healthy way. I came at everything from more of a health perspective. I mean, I just felt like people were really unhealthy and, right, like they didn't embrace all of their capabilities. It really, really bothered me. And I was kind of the enemy to the people around for doing that, for trying to motivate them. I mean, I really, like, they did not like me at all, for that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, is Jasmine in jail now?
Yeah. So she went, she actually went to jail the day she got convicted. So that was 2 weeks ago, on a Wednesday. And so it was a thing where we weren't really prepared for that. I think a lot of us went to the courthouse. We thought that maybe of these 12 jurors, one of them would feel like, okay, a hung jury. But after 2 hours, they deliberated and they came back that Wednesday morning and decided to put her, decided to convict her of this felony lynching charge. And so she immediately was arrested. And so the thing about that moment, this is kind of why I try to tell people about how inspirational Jasmine is, because, she found out, like, now she's really going to have to go to jail. Before that, she had been on bail. So we were hoping that she'd be able to at least get out until her sentencing, but they decided to arrest her and take her to jail. So as they're leading her away, she initially, you could see she got really emotional and she started almost beginning to cry. And then a couple people told her, like, stay strong and, like, to hold her head up. And at that moment, as she's handcuffed and walking out the door, she begins to recite a chant that we say after all Black Lives Matter actions, which is actually an affirmation from Assata Shakur, who was a member of the Black Panther Party in New York there. And so it is our duty to fight for freedom. It is our duty to win. Yeah. We must love and protect one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains.
Amen.
And she recited that in the courtroom. And so everybody that was there to support her chanted that with her. And it was a very powerful moment because it showed us that she was going to, be able to hold herself together and be strong. But it also showed the court and the city of Pasadena, I think, that she wasn't broken, right? Because I think that they were trying to break her spirit, to make all the activists feel like, oh, we better not say anything because we better not do anything because we do, that we'll go to jail too. And I think that showed them that she was not broken, and neither were we. And I think that's a big, strong moment. And so, it is about, she's currently in jail. She got the 90 days last week. The good thing about it, though, is California, because of their mass incarceration and their, arresting of everybody, there's actually overcrowding. So she might be able to get out a little early. But she's still doing the 90 days. And so we're hoping that, people have been going up to see her and people have been checking on her, and she's in good spirits, even though she doesn't want to be there. But we're still out here fighting for her and trying to make sure that, one thing we're trying to do as well is the Governor Jerry Brown, we also have a petition right now to demand that he pardon her because, even if she gets out, when she gets out, she'll still have this felony charge over her head. And so we're hoping that he will see that and see how egregious it is and just agree to pardon her from this, what happened.
I mean, it really is, like, pretty outrageous. I mean, how much are people asking for in life? I mean, for Christ's sake. I mean, you just want to live with a little bit of dignity and your rightful, healthy amount of empowerment. I mean, is Jasmine that much of a threat, to the New World Order? I mean, that, you got to arrest people. I mean, for just, it's ridiculous. I mean, you got, I do a lot of radio shows. This show is 3 years old, and before this, I used to co-host and help produce with Danny Schechter, the news dissector, who was.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I like him.
Oh, you heard him? Oh, great. So. And, and I've interviewed a lot of people. I'm always out in the streets filming with my camera and everything like that. And, corporate greed is completely out of control. I mean, these people, they're so intoxicated on power and profit. And, I don't know why nobody puts them in jail. I mean, like, I don't get it. It's like they let these people lead. Like, they're following, like, these sociopaths and putting people like Jasmine in prison who are just, trying to survive. I mean, it's complete. I don't know. I mean, I'm always saying that we have a mental illness epidemic in this country, and I feel like it's being proven more and more. But something that you mentioned, you just kind of reminded me in my notes of things that I was going to bring up with Melina Abdullah. Yeah, it was the 1994 crime bill that let me see, crime bill, to massively expand incarceration. You know, when Hillary called the black youth super predators, and again, Amy Goodman today played a clip of former President Clinton, kind of blaming the people, saying how it's, the black youth want to blame the police and regard the police as the enemy when it's really, a gang and cocaine and giving guns to people and telling the young to go and kill, other like young black people. And Melina's response when to former President Clinton saying that, which I completely agreed with, is that he's the one that's responsible. It's the policymakers that create these conditions, for people to be acting this way. And it's, Melina used the term neoliberal politics and blaming the people that are being assaulted for their own oppression. I mean, I've been saying this for decades.
No, I totally agree. And I think that's the thing that we're really trying to push back at now, is that, you can't enforce policies. And it was I think the thing that's sad about this Clinton running again is that, when Bill Clinton ran, a lot of so-called liberals really felt like this is a great change because we just got out of the Reagan era, right? And like Reaganomics was clearly anti-working class, anti-community, any kind of safety net. And so people felt like, oh, now Clinton's going to come in as a Democrat and he's going to change things. And because of his New Deal Democrat, the New Democrat thing that he ran under, like a lot of the blue dogs that were a lot more conservative, he kind of continued a lot of Reagan's and actually entrenched a lot of Reaganomics. And people don't see that oftentimes. And part of those policies clearly were about incarcerating. Instead of addressing the social causes of problems, they address the symptoms, right? So you go after the symptoms. To me, the drug dealer is a symptom of a bigger problem, right? Like the gang member is a symptom of a bigger problem. But like instead of going after that cause, which is unbridled and neoliberal capitalism that really is about, get rich or die trying, you go after the symptoms. And I think that's something that's very important that we don't, I think, Obama's kind of continued that in some ways. And I think Hillary Clinton is going to do the same sort of thing. So that's one thing we really want to draw attention to in what we've been fighting for with Black Lives Matter.
I thought you had to be smart to be a president. I mean, basic cause and effect. I mean, a 5-year-old can figure that out.
Yeah, I think though, they kind of, a lot of people in power, they like the low information voter. It's like the least amount of information you have and the least amount of empowerment that you have, the more power they have.
Right.
And so it doesn't really matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. If you're not really about it, education and the biggest reason why I can sort of talk about exactly what Melina said or exactly what you said is like in most states, but in California specifically, we spend $60,000 per person in jail and $10,000 per student. So it shows the priorities. And so if you really want to, limit the prison system, you put more money into education. But for some reason, they think, well, that's not an issue. You can't put money into the problem. No, the money is the major reason why students have, 2 big classrooms. They have a lot of schools that are out in California. There's not enough books to go around. So, to think that we're going to put more money into prisons and you're not going to now put more emphasis into imprisoning people, it's a clear connection. And so, but they don't, a lot of times politicians don't want to address that. They want us to be ignorant and just think, well, we need the prisons because without the prisons, we'd have more criminals. But really, I think a lot of times mass incarceration and these sort of things also foster a society that sort of allows criminality to sort of flourish and criminalization to flourish. we have to look at the bigger picture. We have to look at the economic structure that has a racial component, right? Economic separate of looking at race is problematic, but if you don't understand how economics is really what drives this, then we're going to always kind of be thinking about the wrong thing. So this is why we talk about race, class, gender, sexuality. These things are all connected in Black Lives Matter as well.
So then they know what they're doing. I mean, the so-called president. Yeah. I mean, they know what they're doing, and they're just clearly. Clearly, former President Bill Clinton has to know that the government sold the people out to corporate profit, and everything in this. I mean, everything's being profitized. The justice system, policing, the prisons popping up all over the country are all becoming, for profit. I think I feel ashamed sometimes to be an American. I mean, I think what the rest of the country must look at us and think that we're like barbarians. Like, oh my God, like the United States has for-profit prisons. I mean, like clearly you're going to be, putting anybody and everybody in jail if you're looking to profit off of a prison. I mean, doesn't take a genius to figure that out.
Yeah, and I point to organizations like the CCA, the Correctional Corporation of America,
absolutely.
And how they actually, when they go into certain states, and when they buy jails and they corporatize, they privatize them, they have certain mandates that they need to keep those beds 90% full.
That's right.
So if you mandate to a state that in order for this privatization thing to go, because it is, again, privatization is because it's a neoliberal thing where we want to privatize prisons. I don't think we should have, I'm a prison abolitionist, right? So I'm not going to say that we should have more public prisons, but when you privatize a prison and you put it into a profit motive, part of that profit motive is predicated on them having beds still. And so they mandate that the states must maintain a 90% bed fill rate. And so if that's part of the agreement, you got to arrest more people. And so, that's why all kinds of things are criminalized. That's why, and another thing that people don't oftentimes think about, and the thing that we really are trying to shed light on as well, is the prison system is not filled with, it's not like the majority of people in prison are like rabid murderers and rapists. It's the majority drug addicts. 65% of people are for nonviolent drug crime, right? And so, that's another issue. You talked about health. How do we improve our healthcare system to make sure that people who are drug addicts get health care, that get medical health care? And another large percentage of our prison system is also people with mental health issues. And so the priorities of our state, which is to sort of close down state-sponsored mental health clinics or health care, to privatize it, it just is going to continue to exacerbate the problem. And that's why we have more people going to jail. And that also helps to kind of foster criminalization, which is kind of at the forefront of why people are getting shot in the streets, because the police assume that these communities are criminal. So, hey, we're going to shoot first, ask questions later.
I think that's...
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, like that, I really believe that that's their plan, is to create the conditions deliberately so that they can just keep the for-profit cash system flowing, and they don't care at whose expense it is. I mean, that's what the so-called wars in the Middle East, Syria, and all this stuff is. I wanted to just kind of quickly mention, I mean, also the prisons are becoming where they're housing the mentally ill. And I wanted to just point out, because just last week, here in New York at the No Separate Justice Vigil in front of the Metropolitan Correctional Facility in Lower Manhattan, one of the speakers who is in New York, George Malincrot, who was a psychotherapist at the Dade County Correctional Facility, he wrote a book called Getting Away with Murder about an inmate, patient, Darren Rainey, a 50-year-old, supposedly schizophrenic. Sometimes, they call the little guy, prisoners, schizophrenic. They call them everything and anything under the sun, but yet, the powers that be need to be called some of this stuff too. So they put him in they torture. It's like routine to just torture, abuse the prisoners, and the guards put him in a shower of 180 degrees and basically scalded him to death.
Oh my God.
Back in 2011, and so the psychotherapist who wrote this book, he tried getting justice. I mean, he's kind of still trying. If you know any radio people over there that might want to do an interview with him, we're trying to share this story because it's like it's completely barbaric.
Well, and that we are also so Jasmine is one of our main priorities right now, right? Like trying to liberate her, trying to make sure she gets justice. But we've also there's a number of other cases that we have here in Los Angeles, and one is a woman named Waukesha Wilson, who was in the Los Angeles LAPD Metro Detention Center, and she got pulled in the weekend of Easter, earlier in April. And so as she's in there was no clear evidence of if she had any psychological problems, like she wasn't held on the 5150 or anything like that. But while she was in jail, she had been talking to her family, and so it was Easter weekend, so Monday, the courts were going to be closed, and so she wasn't able to go to trial until the Tuesday after Easter. And so the last time her family heard from her was on Easter Sunday, and then they didn't hear from her again. And so they went down to the courthouse on that Tuesday to see her and to make sure she was okay. She never showed up. They called the department, the police department. They called the jail numerous times, never got any word. It was 5 days after they last heard from her. And they finally found out that she had died.
And they called, right, and then she died when they tried to. 5 days later, they found out she was. She was dead. Yeah, I heard about that story.
Yeah, so we've been really trying to look that up because it's the same sort of thing where people are in jail. There's all these issues that go on, and then the jails try to blame a psychological issue or whatever. Or sometimes if someone does have mental health issues, they're beat and abused. And so I think it is a national issue, and these jails, and this is a police jail, they need to be further investigated. It needs to be a federal investigation because it's the same sort of thing that happened to Sandra Bland and, back down in Texas. And they also said that she had mental health issues, and that's why she killed herself. But, we're still feeling, a lot of people feel like she was killed, right? And so I think that if there's ways of making connections, and, we do know some people out here, so if you can forward that information about this person.
Oh, sure.
We would love to, figure out, the more we can connect this, I think the stronger our criticisms and our cases can be against the way the government and the way the police and different agencies are treating the houseless folks, homeless people, mental health people, but even just anybody who goes into jail, the people that ended up dying. And it's just a lot of women, right? There's a lot of women, black women specifically, that have died mysteriously in jail. So this needs to be looked into from a federal level, if you ask me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Professor Anthony Ratcliff at California State, Los Angeles. I'd love to talk to you again sometime.
Definitely. You have my number, so it was great talking to you. I love how you brought a lot of different things into the discussion.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. Have a great day.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Actually, sorry, before the bumper music, I wanted to just read from Truth Dig. Felony lynching is defined as the act of attempting to take someone from the lawful custody of a police official. It was originally introduced to prevent the lynching of those taken from police custody by lynch mobs. The charge against Abdullah sparked outrage due to its controversial name and historical reference. Many consider her sentencing a public lynching and a punishment for rising up against local injustices. Her conviction is not only about punishing Jasmine Richards, but also is the lynching. Melina Abdullah told Democracy Now! So it's really disgusting and ironic that she's charged and convicted with felony lynching when the real lynching that's carried out is done in the same way it is carried out in the late 19th and early 20th century, where it's supposed to punish those who dare to rise up against the system. And I also wanted to play This Is a Movement, Not a Moment, Jasmine Richards, Jasmine Abdullah of Black Lives Matter.
Actually got involved in Black Lives Lives Matter movement once we went to Ferguson, the Ferguson ride. It was life-changing. I experienced black love for the first time, and I was able to cry for the first time and heal. Before I was part of Black Lives Matter, I was actually sitting at this park just hanging out like all my friends over there. That's what I was doing at first. I really didn't have any drive. I had no self-respect. I had no love to give. And so now I'm actually trying to give back what Black Lives Matter has given me. Well, I got involved with Kendrick McDade's case once his mother, Anya Slaughter, reached out to me. I did an action at the Rose Parade, and I had his picture. I made a poster of his picture. And at the Occupy LAPD headquarters, his mom walked up to me and she said, "You're the one who had my son's face on the news. You remembered him." And from then on, I loved her. She's been my family because in her I've seen my mother, my own mom, who's lost her son. And I see how when they lose their children, they lose themselves. And she had to relearn how to write, relearn how to eat, like, you know what I mean? And it was like, that moved me. And I'm determined to not lose any more friends, not lose any more young men in my community or women. And I promised his mom. I promised his mom that I would give her justice, and I'm going to keep that promise. I grew up in Pasadena. We moved here when I was about 7. I have one brother who's deceased and 2 sisters. One sister who's deceased as well. I grew up on Los Robles and Orange Grove, which is actually down the street. They consider my neighborhood a zero tolerance zone. So even if we wanted to hang out in front of our apartment, we were considered a gang member. My mom worked lots of hours, so the people on the outside of my community, which are considered the gang members, were my family. So I grew up lost and confused. I grew up around here searching for answers. I played basketball, but I didn't have anybody didn't show me how to go to college or the SATs or anything like that. So once my brother was killed, I just decided to quit everything. I graduated from PHS, but I didn't go any further after that. He was murdered on 73rd and Figueroa at 10 o'clock in the morning. A car pulled past him and said, "What gang are you from?" And he said, "I don't gangbang." And they killed him. I was 14, and my brother was like my father. I handled it. I didn't handle it. I got into drugs. I got into drinking. I had scholarships for basketball. I just quit basketball. I seen no more need to live because I'm like, you're just gonna get killed anyway. My mom, she has 26 years clean, and I thought she would relapse because her son was murdered, but she kept going, kept it pushing. So my mom has been that motivation for me. I'm tired of putting my friends on my T-shirts. I'm tired of having car washes for them because we don't know about insurance. I'm tired of putting them as tattoos on my arms. This is when my friend was born, and this is his death day. And I'm sick and tired. So, my goal is to save lives by any means necessary, even if that means putting mine on the line. I think it's really funny because when I was out here causing trouble, getting into everything, I never got in trouble by the law. But once I picked up a bullhorn, I became a target. And that just showed me how powerful the woman and black woman's voice is. Because they're trying to stifle me. They're trying to keep me down. I've gotten fired from my job. I've gotten kicked out of my home. And I'm still here organizing. It's just bullies. They're bullies. I was in Old Town. We did an action on March 24th. It was the anniversary of Kendrick McDade. So we shut Old Town down. We did a civil disobedience, a dying. I don't know if anybody knows about Old Town, but that's Pasadena's main source of income. We shut it down. So they were disturbed and mad. Criminal threats, terrorist threats, assault, trespassing, failure to comply with the peace officers, and failure to turn down amplified sound.
you're facing these charges in court, and it's really interesting to hear that they're putting a terrorism charge in there because a couple of weeks ago, a white supremacist murderer massacred 9 people, and the FBI says that what he did in killing 9 people was not terrorism. How does that make you feel?
It didn't make me feel any type of way because I'm used to this now. It's like something that we're used to. I don't expect them to do anything. I don't expect them to value our lives. I'm not expecting them to do anything. So it didn't hurt me. It used to. But Melina Abdullah told me, why does it hurt you? Why are you expecting them to do something? You know what I mean? They haven't this long, so stop expecting. It's crazy. When we shut down Old Town, they came at us in such a volatile way, and we didn't back down. I seen Miss Slaughter, which is Kendrick McDade's mother, take her power back in his little sister, and they got in the police's face and they let them know exactly how they felt. And so that right there, that empowers me. That I can't even explain the feeling. It's like a feeling that starts within your toes and it rises up and it goes into your spirit, and then something just comes out of you like a lion.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that, and then I'm going to be making my call to Carl Dix of the Revolutionary Communist Party. He's been in Baltimore for the trials of the officers that killed Freddie Gray. So please don't go away. Carl?
Yes?
How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Yeah, great. Thank you for joining me on this Tuesday, June the 14th, Organic News on Awake Radio, and you are in Baltimore covering the trials of what is this? This is the 3rd trial of one of the 6 cops that murdered Freddie Gray.
Yes, exactly. This is the cop who drove the van, the one who gave Freddie Gray the rough ride that contributed quite a bit to nearly severing his spine, which is what killed him. And so far, the first 2 trials have been just travesties of justice. The first cop essentially came into court and said, yeah, I didn't buckle him in the van, but nobody buckles people we've arrested in the van. Everybody does it. So what? And when asked why he didn't get him medical attention, he said, oh, that wasn't my job. The second cop came in and said the same thing. It wasn't my job.
So
now this...
I'm confused. I don't get it. What is their job?
Well, essentially, if you want to come down to what the reality is, their job to control Black and Latino youth, especially across the country. They're not out there to protect and serve the people. They're out there to protect and serve the system that rules over the people. And in this trial, the defense is almost coming out and saying that, and the court is endorsing it because one person, in speaking to why these cops should not be convicted of anything, said, look, if we convict these cops for what they did, we'd have to convict the whole Baltimore City Police Department because they all do things like this. And it is actually the reality. There are regulations that say when you arrest someone in Baltimore, you must buckle, because you shackle them so their hands are behind them. They got their hands behind them so they can't hold themselves steady, so you're supposed to buckle them into the seat in the van. And if the cops are upset at you or decide they want to have some fun, they won't buckle you in and ride you around erratically, start and stop very quickly, throwing you around. And in Freddie Gray's case, he had already been brutalized by the cops who beat him and arrested him for nothing, just because he tried to run away from them because he didn't want to get messed with.
By
So,
the
go ahead.
by the looks of the, I've watched the video. I mean,
Yes.
someone else made the point. I'm trying to remember who that was, and if it was actually you who made the point that he was already crippled before they even put him in the van. Because, I mean, after they had him on the sidewalk and one of the cops' knees are, on the back of his neck, and they're bending him into a pretzel. I mean, he couldn't even walk after that before they even put him in the van.
Yes, exactly. See, because when they beat him down and kneeled into his back, he screamed out in pain.
Oh, jeez.
And then when they dragged him over to the van, he couldn't walk. They dragged him over. He was bent like a pretzel.
Yeah, his legs were dragging when they were taking him into the van.
And we were in the neighborhood where Freddie Gray lived and where the police beat him and arrested him. And that's what people who witnessed this told us. They said they heard him scream out in pain. One woman was in her house watching TV, but his screams were so loud, it pierced through all that noise and brought her out. So all 6 of the cops were involved in the injuries that were inflicted on Freddie. The 2 who arrested him and beat him, the driver of the van who did the starting and stopping, the other cops who refused to buckle him in and refused his cries that he needed medical attention. They all worked together on this, and at the very least, they're all accessories to murder. But the prosecution has been putting on a case that just has gaping holes for these cops to claim it wasn't my task, somebody else should have done that, all the other. And they're really greasing the skids for all of these killers to walk. And this case, what's unusual about this? It's not unusual that cops brutalized and even killed a young black man. That happens far too often. What is unusual is that these cops got charged, and the only reason that happened was because people rebelled in Baltimore. And that's a very important thing to remember, because that's the only reason they charged these cops. Now they're trying to let them off one by one, and I'm not just down in Baltimore covering this trial, although we are going to have coverage up at the website revcom.us, should go up later on today, about a press conference and speak out that was held at the courthouse in Baltimore yesterday. But we're calling on people to refuse to accept this, to remember what it took to get them to charge these cops, and to raise their voices and to act to say that it's unacceptable to let another killer cop walk, when we know that these cops murdered this young black man. And then the other thing that I'm bringing out to people is that this is really built into the fabric of this capitalist imperialist system. I mean, look, from the very beginning, there was always a militarized force that was out there keeping black people in their place here in America, beginning with when they brought enslaved Africans over to work on the plantations. In fact, that's where police departments come from. The patrols that the slave owners set up to make sure that the enslaved Africans didn't run away. And the police forces of this country grew out of that. Well, today, it's no longer mobs of white civilians who are patrolling black people to keep them in place. It's now the job of the police department to do that. And look, it's going to take revolution, nothing less, to end this once and for all. And that's a message that I'm bringing to people, together with the fact that we in the Revolutionary Communist Party, which I'm a representative of, are organizing right now for an actual revolution at the soonest possible time. And I'm bringing that message to people, along with the message that people need to stand up and say no to this. Because if we fail to stand up, these authorities could beat us down so far that we'd be broken. But if we do stand up, that's a crucial part of organizing for the actual revolution that we need to get rid of this system.
Before you came on, I was interviewing someone from Black Lives Matter in Los Angeles. It was supposed to be Melina Abdullah, but someone got arrested and she had to deal with that situation. So she got me a replacement of Professor Anthony Ratcliff to be on, who was really, really good. Just talking about Jasmine Richards Abdullah, who they, I think, ultimately
the woman who's arrested under the lynching law.
Yeah. So, and that in contrast with the Stanford rapist case, who only got, and that guy was only looking at 3 months with good behavior too for rape. I mean, it's just I know it's completely crystal clear what is happening, and I mean I don't know what it's going to take to rile enough people up for this.
I mean, it's something that Bob Avakian said recently, is that 3 things have to happen. And the first thing is that people have to just look square in the face at what's really happening. Because that Stanford rape case, this guy, in raping this woman, he was penetrating her with some foreign object. I don't know what it was. And a couple people came by and witnessed him doing this. And that's the only reason he stopped. He ran and tried to get away, and they caught him and held him for the police. But then when the trial comes up, it's like the victim of the rape was the one who was on trial. What were you wearing?
Yeah.
Was it provocative? You urinated outside. Where did you urinate? How did you urinate? All of these questions, there was no real need to be questioning her about anything. Because the real question was, what made this guy think that he had the right to come up on an unconscious woman and commit these depraved acts on her? But the judge gets moved by, I don't want to destroy this guy's life.
Right.
So I'm going to give him a tap on the wrist, ignoring what has been done to this young woman and what it does to her life.
Right. I didn't know like a lot of the details like that you expressed on that Stanford rapist, but I mean, talk a little bit. Like, have you been inside the courtroom during these proceedings for this third officer named Officer Caesar Goodson Jr.?
Caesar Goodson.
Yeah, 46 years old.
Yeah, and see, it's really sickening to watch this case get put on, because some of the witnesses the prosecution called sound like they're testifying for the defense. Because the prosecution called some so-called experts who say, well, police are supposed to do this, but they usually don't. And it's a rule that everybody violates, as if to say, well, since all the other cops violate it, these cops should be able to violate it too. And everybody's going around the fact that there's this young man whose spine was severed by something these cops did to him. And I can't say for sure whether it was the ones kneeling into his neck
I would say
when they arrested him,
I would say
or
that's
the van, or a combination.
Yeah.
But it's clear that it was something done to him by the police that did this. And the trial is not centering around that. All kinds of other things get brought in. Who was the senior officer? Who was the one who talked to him first? And each cop shifts whatever blame there is to the other end of the line in an attempt to wiggle through. And so far, the court has allowed them to do it. It's been particularly the judge. In this case, the acquittal of the cop before this one was a judge trial, And this is also a judge trial. So it really looks like they're breezing the skids to let another killer cop walk. And when you look at this, when you look at the Stanford rape case, when you look at the ugly stuff that is coming out in the presidential elections from Donald Trump, and then you consider that the Democrats are not really an answer to that, it really does underscore the necessity for an actual revolution and the need to organize people for that right now, which is something that we in the Revolutionary Communist Party are doing. And I would encourage people to go to the website revcom.us, both for our coverage of what's going on around this trial, and a call is going out now in Baltimore that we're a part of issuing for people to be at the courthouse when the verdict is announced. So we're going to be covering that too, but also what we're doing as far as organizing for an actual revolution is also being covered on RevCom. And people who hate these horrors and want to find out what can and must be done about them need to go to that website, revcom.us, to learn about that and to get involved.
It says on a Huffington Post article that this cop's attorneys are trying to argue that Gray caused his own injuries. I mean, it just is, it's like in your face, like disgusting.
Yeah, it is disgusting.
The guy's handcuffed in the back of a van, unbelted in. And they're admitting like that he was given a rough ride.
Well, it turns out they can't deny it because Baltimore City is a city where they put up a lot of surveillance in especially the black neighborhoods, surveillance cameras.
Right.
So there are all kinds of cameras that have footage of the police van not going directly to the precinct. And see, where they arrested Freddie Gray was about a 2-minute ride from the precinct that they were supposed to take him to. They rode him around for 45 minutes. So they were clearly doing something other than taking him to the police station and processing him. But the surveillance cameras, which they put up there so that they could keep an eye on what black people in the neighborhoods were doing, also got pictures of what this van was doing. And there are all kinds of video and photos of the van driving erratically, making fast and dangerous turns. And you can just imagine how much somebody in the van who is handcuffed with their arms behind them and not buckled in would be being thrown around by that. So then to turn around and say Freddie Gray did it to himself, no, that is a lie. He did not handcuff his own hands behind him. He did not unbuckle the seatbelt. They didn't put it on him. And you know he was being thrown around. So for them to have to look at the fact that what they did was throwing him around in the van and say, oh, well, it's really what he did to himself.
I mean, how could that even be an argument? I mean, like how does the judge not look at the attorney and just like laugh and be like, are you serious? You know, unless the whole system is just completely corrupt.
That's the thing.
I mean, that's the only explanation.
This is how the system is set up and how it works. The cops, it's not just bad cops who do this. They're DAs who either refuse to indict them or if they feel forced to indict them, don't really prosecute them. And then there are judges who give them a pass because they listen to idiotic arguments or arguments that don't address the legal issues, but treat them as if they're serious arguments that they need to weigh and consider and act in accordance with. That's how the guy before this one got the acquittal. Because what he was charged with doing, he actually did, and he had to admit that he did it, but then he made an argument which didn't address the legal issues as why they should let him go, and it was because everybody does what he did.
Oh,
It's a common practice for Baltimore City police officers to do what he did. And the judge accepted that as a reason to exonerate him, as opposed to saying, well, this means Baltimore City police officers should start obeying the rules. It's kind of like, oh, everybody ignores the rules. I guess it's okay for you to do it too. And I don't care that someone died because of it.
I mean, this is like really an everybody for yourself system. There's clearly a war against the people. I mean, there's no question about it.
No, exactly. And people need to look at that reality. They need to dig into why it's happening. And then they need to say, okay, it's on us to stop this and act in ways that they feel are necessary to do that. And look, if that brings people to revolution, then they need to get with the revolution. If it brings them somewhere else, then they need to actually act that way. And one other thing that I've been bringing out to people, Muhammad Ali passed away recently. And you have a lot of people who are getting up on TV and saying they embrace Muhammad Ali's legacy. Well, I'm old enough to have known what Muhammad Ali did decades ago. And when they told him he had to go to Vietnam, he said, no, I'm not going. My enemy is not in Vietnam. My enemy is here. And my enemy are those who are committing wrongs against black people. Well, people who are embracing his legacy need to confront the fact that wrongs are still being committed against black people.
Yeah.
And if you're with Ali, then you should be acting to do something to stop those wrongs.
Right.
And if you're not doing that, take Muhammad Ali out of your mouth because it don't belong there. Yeah. Because at one point, that's what he stood for, and that's why he inspired so many people.
That's why that saying, talk is cheap, has been around for so long, because it's easy to say stuff. It's an entirely different story to take action.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Carl Dix, down there in Baltimore. How long are you going to be down there for?
I'm down here as long as the trial's going on.
And, I guess the city of Baltimore, they're not too worried if they let this cop off. I mean, one by one, they're just going to be letting the cops get away with it. I mean, they're not worried about, or maybe they want to create more riots or uprisings, I should say, down there.
Well, I think they hope that they have pacified people just through the indictments and that people have moved on and they can let them go. And so far, it's worked. I mean, the one where there was a mistrial, people took that and then they let the next cop go free. So that's what they're hoping, that this will just go past, and even if people don't like it, they'll shrug their shoulders and say, well, what can we do? And we're trying to say to them, there is something that we can and must do.
This is
and let's stand up and say this is unacceptable. And people need to get with the revolution that's moving to get rid of this system.
This is where the people really need to, maintain their endurance, and you can't.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, have an uprising and then relax. It's got to be consistent, or else. I mean, I don't know. I hope. Have the people. What happened with the people when the first two cops got let off? Were there uprisings down there for that?
No, there weren't. There were protests, but they were relatively small. I mean, look, people are very angry about this, but there's a certain layer of resignation. I guess this is how the system is going to act. I didn't expect that they were going to indict the cops. They only did it because of the rebellion, and now they're letting them go, and that's what cops usually get away with it. So people are mad about it, especially black people, but they also don't think there's anything that they can do. And that's a feeling that we're trying to engage with people and say, no, there is something we can do.
See,
We can stand up and refuse to accept it.
Right. You got, the people can't be their own worst enemy. If the people are their own worst enemy, I mean, then there you have it. I mean, you got to be on your own side at least.
No, exactly. So we will send you reports that we're sending into RevCom on what's going on down here. And hopefully we can talk again in the future, not about this, about other developments in the world.
Thank you so much, Carl Dix of the Revolutionary Communist Party.
Thank you for having me on, Kat.
Okay, have a great night.
You too.
Bye. Okay, so up next is going to be Junaid Ahmad. He is currently in Virginia, but he is based in Lahore, Pakistan, where he is the director of the Center for Global Dialogue. And we're going to be talking about the Orlando shooting. And I just wanted to please encourage people to go to Awake Radio and the number 1, no spaces, Awake Radio number 1. You could find my podcasts there, and there's a link to support. I get absolutely no funding whatsoever, and I am just, I just feel completely moved to do activist work, and I have to do it. I just feel like I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do it, and I need support doing it. There's also my personal YouTube channel where a lot of my interviews and protests are listed, and that is April, like the month, Waters with 2 T's, and there is a space, April space Waters on YouTube, and there's a link there to support. We at Awake Radio really need it, and I really need it to do journalism work. My articles are on Hot Indie News and also Democracy Chronicles about local protests and rallies that are going on in and around New York City.